calling the Finance Committee meeting to order at 6:01. Mike, I'm going to let you read it this week.
You got it. Meetings of the Finance Committee and Select Board, no, just the Finance Committee right now, are recorded for transmission on Rutland Public Access Television and YouTube, pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law, General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 18, and the Governor's March 15th, 2020 order imposing strict limitation on the number of people that may gather in one place. This meeting of the Town of Rutland Finance Committee will be conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information and the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and or parties who have a right and or requirement to attend this meeting may be found on Rutland's website at www.townofrutland.org. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to watch the meeting may do so, as my screensaver goes up, in the following manner: by watching Rutland Community Television live on channel 192 and on the town's website, www.townofrutland.org, or by viewing the recording of the meeting on the town's YouTube page following this meeting's completion. No in-person attendance by members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. In the event that we are unable to do so, despite our best efforts, we will post on Rutland's website a video recording, transcript, and or comprehensive record of the proceeding as soon as possible after the meeting.
Okay, first item on the agenda is the minutes from the meeting on May 14th. Do I have a motion?
I make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second? Okay.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? Okay, roll call. Ted?
Aye.
Carol?
Aye.
Pete?
Aye.
Tommy?
Aye.
Dave?
Aye.
Karen? Aye. Second agenda item is meeting minutes from the meeting from May 21st. Do I have a motion?
Make a motion to approve those minutes as well.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, roll call. Ted?
Aye.
Carol?
Aye.
Pete?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
Dave?
Aye.
Karen? Aye. Okay? Okay, so next item on the agenda is the budget. So, Mike, you can take it away because if anyone's looked at it, it's changed.
Yep.
So we are in the process of negotiating an intermunicipal agreement with the town of Oakham. And I plugged in placeholders based off of the preliminary discussions we've had, and the board, the select board will be meeting about this on Monday in executive session to review the negotiations. If they like it, they'll sign it. If they don't, we'll keep going back to the drawing board. Chief Knipe has some more information that he can share with us at a later date, but where we're still in negotiations, I'm the one who has to talk about it now. But a couple other things that have changed in there is we've added 85,000 of stabilization. If you remember at the last week, we talked about trying to get that number under 99, which is 10% of the budget, 10% of what we have in the stabilization account. So what I ended up doing was I just plugged in the preliminary numbers from this negotiation because this is set to start on July 1st anyway. We looked at Oakham's ambulance numbers for the past 3 years, and they average around $80,000 a year in ambulance call revenue. And that's Oakham's share. I want to clarify that we are Oakham's backup ambulance when they don't have the station manned. And we, on average, get $100,000 a year in calls that we are already doing for Oakham on our own right now. So hit to our revenue as it stands right now. This is saying we'd be adding an additional 65 onto that because I just wanted to be conservative because of how the economy's going and you just don't know how it's going to work. So I dropped the 80 average to 65, plug that in the budget, and that's what brought us down to 85. I do also want to say that as much as I want to just get this done and over with and out of the way, as I've been saying since the start, we got an email from our insurance company, MIA, MIA. It stands for the Massachusetts Interlocal Insurance Agency, today, that they have released $25 million from their reserve account to help their clients, because all of their clients are local cities and towns, and they understand the revenue situation that we are in for next year as a result of the pandemic. So our insurance assessments will go down. We just have no idea how much yet, because we just got that today. And basically they said the board approved us releasing this. We'll get back to you with what this means for you later on, but we have to let you know per our bylaws. So we should get that within the next week or two. And another thing that could help here is Director Moriarty, because of the similar reason, with the state knowing the revenue situation we'll be in, got notification from the Commonwealth that they'll be giving the dispatch center an additional $140,000 in grant funding for next year. I don't want to touch that yet, because I don't know if this is going to be an annual grant or if this is a one-time hit and that's it, in which case we could just be plugging a hole that we're going to have to deal with even more than the holes we've already kind of plugged in here. So that could also help us in the end as well. I did send the letters that we talked about last week to Congressman McGovern and the 2 senators. Obviously, we haven't heard back yet, because Washington is Washington, and it takes an arm and a leg to do anything there. But we are trying. We do have the balanced budget as it is right now, with $85,000 coming from stabilization, with the hope that that number will be reduced if we get more from insurance and from this dispatch grant. We know it's going to go down ballpark another 10,000 already, because we had a dispatcher who was at top step resign and go to a separate, a different place of employment, and we hired someone who came in at a step 1, and the packages of benefits that they took from the town were different from each other. So we'll have about a $10,000 savings there as well. So that 85 is really 75, and then we're looking to see if we can go any further down than that.
Any discussion on what Mike just said?
Ted, Karen.
A question that I have is there still a possibility that at some point between now and the end of the fiscal year we're planning, the state says, we're giving you a whole lot less money than you had budgeted on, and this whole thing becomes unbalanced?
Yes. But, however, I want to give that caveat there. The way it's kind of looking now, we could start the fiscal year, and then the state comes back and is like, hey, sorry, we're cutting you mid-year, which the state has full constitutional authority to do in Massachusetts. In fact, in 2010, I can't speak for Rutland, but I know at least in Gardner, and Karen can correct me from Rutland, I'm sure, because you were on the finance committee then, I think. Governor Patrick bumped local aid and Chapter 90, which is road repair work. And then I think it was in October or November, slashed the whole thing. So slashed all of Chapter 90 and cut local aid by 20%. And that was in a year that it was just the recession and all cities and towns had already passed everything. There wasn't even the option to go into a 1/12. But there's a constitutional authority under Chapter 90C, excuse me, Chapter 9C to go in and do cuts mid-year.
I couldn't tell you what year it happened, but I do remember that we were cut.
Yeah. So if that's the case, that's where that's why the state is saying, while it's normally we could probably have a fall town meeting. We don't need it under our bylaws, but we'll probably have it just to get stuff out of the way. They're saying, please definitely plan on having a fall town meeting, because we should have the answers from the state by November. The reason being, oh, go ahead.
Have we gotten an update from the schools at all?
The school has told us to go with the assessment that they have originally given us, because they will be, while their costs are going up just like ours as well, and their revenue is projected to go down just like ours as well, they'll be taking that out of their version of their stabilization account.
And our budget is balanced on that figure that was, what, 5.5 or so higher than last year?
Yes. I will say, because the question was asked earlier, I have begun the process of doing what the Finance Committee requested, and doing a version of the budget that has the school budget at what we requested them to be at when we had the budget roundtable. I just want to make sure that all of its I's and T's are crossed and dotted. So I'm having our town accountant, who is also a school business administrator, just double check that before we release that, just because of how hot button of an issue that can be. I want to make sure it's not missing anything in it.
Any discussion, guys?
So I just have a question for Mike. When you prepared that letter to the Congress people, can you put that out on the hard drive? Or out in the...
Yeah. Oh, sure.
I only asked because
Yeah.
I think I'd like to be able to maybe use that same format or content to a certain extent and write a letter myself.
Sure. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that'd be great.
And do we have, so you started the alternate budgets that we would have to bring with us to the town meeting.
Correct.
Is there a time frame in which you would want to be able to bring those in and let us work with those to see what they are?
Next week.
Next week? Okay, good.
The
Yeah.
stabilization requires a 2/3 vote instead of just a majority. So we would definitely have to look at a way to get another $75,000 out of the budget at this point, in case 2/3 didn't approve to take it out of stabilization.
Okay.
Correct. Karen?
Yep.
Just as a note, we do have a quorum of the select board now. So they have to open. Wayne, I see you're here, so you'd have to open as the vice chair because Sheila's not here.
Wayne, you're on mute.
Yeah, am I on? Am I on now?
There you go. Yep.
Do I have to read all that information? Like,
Nope, already took care of it. Just open the meeting.
okay. All right. Well, I hereby open the Board of Selectmen's meeting for Thursday, May 28th, 2020 at 6:14 p.m.
All right. So back to the budget. Once we have, basically next week, you'll get both the amended budget that the Finance Committee requested and the final numbers from the insurance and the dispatch reduction as well.
Thanks, Mike.
So guys, we've got to start looking at ways, in case the town folk decide not to approve stabilization, we're going to have to find ways to either tell a certain percentage to the different departments or find ways to cut it, because if the townsfolk decide not to vote, find that somewhere else.
But isn't that what Mike is going to be developing as proposal?
No.
That if the town meeting says, no, I don't like that number, and we go back and we say a totally level funded budget would mean the changes or reductions in these areas to get us to the point where it might be acceptable. Of course, they may say, I don't accept the level funding. I want to take a cut of 100,000.
The budget that Mike's working on is trying to get us to the point where we told the schools to the 3%, the 3.5%. So we need to look at the budget and look at ways, or suggest, we're the ones that suggest where to inform Mike, to inform the department heads where they should be cutting to find that 75. It might be less. Hopefully next week we're going to find out that it's, 50,000, and that would be really nice.
But our process here is that we have the budget with stabilization funds supporting it.
Right.
We're anticipating, if we anticipate that won't fly at the town meeting, then we have to develop, regardless of the 3%, I think, is that right?
Right.
We have to develop what the rest of the budget would be, and so we need to do that next week.
Yes. So everyone, if you can all kind of look at the budget and suggest some ideas, because we have to be prepared that the townsfolk will say no. Hopefully they will say yes, and that'll be nice, but there's always a potential that they say no, and we have to be ready to have a budget to go forward.
Okay.
They could say no, even if it's only 20,000. I mean, we gotta be prepared regardless.
Right.
Right. We got to be prepared to have zero coming from stabilization.
Correct.
How does the stabilization money make it onto the floor? Is it a separate warrant item, or does it go in as part of the budget?
So the budget article that will be, so the way that the budget article will be voted in the motion of that. So the warrant will say to raise a sum of money to fund the municipal departments. So what the way the motion will be read is the total number is 8-point-something million. Of that 8-point-something million, there's 75,000 of stabilization, 200,000 free cash, and you read where all the places that comes from in the motion.
So does then the whole budget need to pass by 2/3 because of that one line, or just that one line?
The whole thing.
So the school would be its own warrant article. The municipal departments would all have to pass with that threshold. So everything but the schools.
So basically, we need to figure out how to cut $75,000 out of the municipal departments. And last week you said that basically means fire, police, and DPW.
Yes. Now, if the school, that's our total cash that we have. If we reduce the schools, then that means we have more money for the municipal department side. It's a wash in the end. But
I thought for the schools that even if the other towns didn't pass it, and then that the number was going to stay the same. It wasn't either going to go down, at least for this budget round. So
Correct.
we know what that number is going into this meeting anyway, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. What Ian brought up last week is when we had the roundtable with the schools back in November, the multiple towns suggested, oh, well, we would like to see a 3.5% increase on the school, but no more than 3.5. And then the schools came in at 5.5. So what Ian asked last week was that I go and see what that 3.5 would have been and plug in that number so it's a lower number than what the school had assessed, and see if the town will vote to do that, and that's how we save the money in the end.
Okay.
And not ideal, but it's what was it's an option that's there, and it's what was asked, so we will have that for next week.
So to Ted's point, as we get to the point where we are suggesting a budget value that would drive maybe the police and the fire to reduce staff, would we could as a group we could bring that forward, but we as a group could vote to not recommend approval of that, correct?
Yep, you have that right to do with any article.
Okay.
I will say just one more time though that with the fire department, with the grant that we just received, any reduction in staffing results in us losing that grant. So losing one firefighter actually equates to losing 5 firefighters, and we then have to repay the federal government all of the money we've received from that $500,000 grant.
Right. So pretty much it's through police and DPW because fire is untouchable this year because of that grant.
Yes, if we were to do that type of stuff.
Or we take something from all departments. I mean, we don't have to just, I know that's the big chunk, but that's not where we have to get all the money, is it? I mean,
it isn't, but most of the other departments don't have, you're right, we could cut everything, but like to give a 10% cut out of some of the budgets is going to not allow them to even do any services. So we usually, in the past, it's been, you know, the case where we hit the bigger ones because it's a less of effect than it is to some of the smaller departments where it's, you know, even if we were to take a 3% cut, it would hurt their ability to do the services that they're currently doing.
Right. What about, where are we on that $15,000 with the 2% raises? Did we make a decision on that? I can't remember.
It's in the budget.
Finance committee, yeah. Ian asked me to put them all back in, so they are in the budget at this time.
So the budget that's on the drive now has the cost of living adjustment for those non-union administrative professionals.
Yep.
Okay.
So for the warrants that are out there, like the radar signs and the street signs and whatnot, are those all figured into that number as if they're going to pass? Is that part of the budget?
That does not go into this budget. That's all separate expenditures.
Right.
Okay.
Do we need to say, okay, A, B, or C department, you need to go make 10%, or are you looking for us to recommend line items that should be cut because we looked at those budgets?
It can be either or. In the past, we have done that. We have gone back to the major departments and said you need to cut so many % out. We don't, in the past, we haven't told departments exactly which lines to cut. We usually give them either a dollar amount or a percentage and say, this is what we need you to cut out of your budget.
Yeah, but like I said earlier too, we already know that we're going to get the reduction in dispatch. We know at least 10 grand there because of that new staff member we took on. And we just don't know what we're going to get from Maya yet. But if they just released 25 million from their reserve fund to help their clients, that's more than I thought they had in their reserve fund. So
Do they represent every town? I mean, how many towns is that 25 million going to?
It's 100 and something of them. It's like 125, I think. But remember, they do health, dental, property liability, workers' comp. So we have them for everything here. Not every town has them for everything.
Right.
Some people may have them for health and not have them for liability. Some people may have them. We have them for all of us.
So Mike, what's your guess? Low ball.
Honest to God, I have no idea. I'd like to see at least 10,000. I don't know.
So, Mike, when you said that there's like 100 or so towns, you know, geographically, center of the state, western part of the state, does that insurance company cover Boston and area?
Yeah.
You do? Okay, so that makes it more difficult because of Boston would get a much bigger portion of the 25 million.
That's why Mike said 10,000.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Yeah. So they do our insurance, and they've had this reserve account there. And again, they've just seen, Maya has seen that there's grim revenue projections in general next year. So that's why their board of directors voted to release $25 million from their savings account to reduce assessments for next year to help cities and towns. They only do cities and towns for their insurance.
Can I ask a separate question? For elections, we've budgeted a fair amount of money, and I think we talked about that we still have to pay, that we're gonna have the same amount of election workers. Am I correct in remembering that? So that's not gonna change.
Correct.
But what about everything else?
What do you mean?
Well, you talked about those little machines that everybody's gonna vote with.
That's at
Oh.
town meeting.
That's
And
at
that's
town
gonna be-
meeting.
What?
That's not the election. That's town meeting.
Oh, of course. Of course. I take it all back. I've been dreaming about those stupid little things. I mean, the amount of money, don't get me started. I mean, we're not paying for it. Well, we are indirectly, but, you know.
I can tell you Anita did she did go out for quote on those. She found a qualified system. There was one we had to throw out because there was just no way it would work for what we needed to do. But the one we think we're going to go with is a simple yes, no, abstain button. So it's only 3 buttons on the entire machine, and it's going to be around $15,500.
But that's being paid for by the CARES Act, right?
Correct.
So we also have $7,000 in purchased services. Would that have been to print ballots and everything else?
So that's all election stuff there too. So that's that's everything that's not town meeting related. So that's the ballots for the election. That's the pens to fill in the ballots. This year it's going to be disinfectant to sanitize the ballot boxes.
Right, but what I'm saying is, isn't the CARES Act paying basically for what our purchased services would normally be?
Oh, okay.
Because it's so specialized.
Yes, but that's why we had to write that letter to the congressmen and the senators, because right now they're saying if it's normally in your budget, we're not going to cover it. So we normally budget for that stuff, so they're not going to cover it. They'll only cover what's above and beyond what we budget right now.
Okay.
So what the push is nationally now is almost all cities and towns are writing letters to their congressmen asking them for anything we have left over in the CARES Act, for that to go to general fund revenue to cover those things for that specific reason.
I'm just looking for dollars here.
Yeah, no, I gotcha.
Okay.
So yes, I'll have all that information for you on the budget for next week, and we can go from there.
Mike, any idea when we might hear anything more? I mean, probably not till December as far as CARES Act giving us the rest of the money, essentially.
No, I think we'd hear before then, because the way that the CARES Act is set up is I have on by June 5th, it can be earlier, and I think it will be earlier, when Dan, Seth, and I, and Rich Stevens sit down and go over everything that we have here. That's only everything that we have currently spent and will spend up to June 30th. And that's all we can submit for right now. After that, anything that's left is to be used in fiscal 21. So because there's that break right there, I think we'll be seeing them open up that money well before, because it's only that covers from the beginning of fiscal 21 through the end of December. So that's only the first 6 months of fiscal 21. So I'm sure we'll see something in that time range, probably August, September.
Okay.
For when we can use that balance. And then I wouldn't doubt if we see well, hopefully, if we get the second wave that they're talking about, I wouldn't doubt if we see a second round of this go out to help us in January and February.
So at this point, guys, I guess the only thing I could say is if we all take a look at it, and so that we can have a good discussion next week with Mike as to some ideas as to what we want to do, if he's going to have to go back to the department heads and say 10% or 3,000 or whatever. We just need to give him direction as to what we'd recommend for next Thursday.
Any suggestions as to exactly where we might start looking? I mean, it sounds like no place. I mean, everything's equal that we can't, but we might.
Yeah, in the past, we've always hit the 2 or the 3 largest. This time it's the 2 largest. That's in the past. That's what we've done. Whether that's right, wrong, or indifferent, I can't tell you. All I can say is in the past, that's what we've done. hopefully we won't need to do this. With any luck, they're not going to have a problem with using, you know, $65,000 of stabilization. But we have to be prepared for when the town says, yeah, no.
Mike, will you have you think you'll have those numbers by like Wednesday or so? Or
Yeah, I'm hoping to get them earlier. Once I get them, I'll just send them out to you guys.
okay.
Same thing with the dispatch one. When we get clarification on that extra $100,000 grant that they just got today.
Okay.
Again, I just want to make sure that's an annual one and not a one-time thing. And now we're plugging in free cash and we're plugging in potential stabilization and we're plugging in this extra $100,000 grant that next year we're trying to find $500,000 in money we don't have.
Yeah, but we may be doing that anyway, Mike. I mean, next year could be a lot worse than it is this year.
But it could be better. Here's to that.
Carol, always the optimist.
Mm-hmm. I try.
Okay, so the next item, was there any more discussion on the budget? I'm sorry. Is there any more discussion?
Good.
Okay, so the next item is warrant review for the town meeting. We are posted on Monday to be with the select board because they're going to be placing the articles on Monday.
What time on Monday?
6 o'clock.
6?
Yep.
Oh, 1st of June.
Yep.
Mike, the only thing that we're missing in that town meeting materials is the bylaw.
Yes, I have to upload that, and I understand that. There's two things from the warrant I'd like to go over real quick with the Finance Committee. If I guess Ian and Cameron, that's okay with you too?
Sure.
So I notified Ian of this last week as well as the members of the board, but just so everyone's on the same page here. Ian, was it Friday that I called you? Yeah, it was so last Friday. I was driving to work at about 7:45 in the morning, and I got a call from Joe saying that there was an emergency happening and I had to go to the DPW on my way. Seth and I met, and we were informed that if you'll remember on the article, there was a warrant article to move $100,000 from an old article to repair the water filtration tanks at the water treatment plant,
Right.
because there was work that needed to be done. So before I get into what happened on Friday, just a little bit of the background, because this is what led to all of this happening, is, and I can preface this by saying everything is fine now, as of this afternoon at 3.
So nobody died.
Nobody died. So Joe was in talks with DEP about getting us what's called a consent order. So that's where the town agrees to do some work on the system, and DEP agrees to let us draw more water than usual out of Mushkapot. And what happened was when they were going over some things here, and you'll see in your folder, it says an NC order. DEP said, that's fine, you can come to us and ask for this, but here is a letter we sent to you in December of 2014 that said that we're lowering the amount you can take out because you haven't done any work to your system. And until you do this work that we told you to do back in 2014 and then gave you money to do it in 2017 that you still haven't started yet, we're not going to even consider these conversations right now. So Joe went back and looked, and he did see that there was $50,000 appropriated in 2017, to rehab one of those filtration tanks. The other two were meant to be on the town side, and those also had to be done to be in compliance with that non-compliance order, as well as some other work. Why was it put off? It's because the list that's in that order is a mile long, and if you add it all up in the end, it honestly equates to about $500,000. So it was put off to be put in phases, and then it just a bunch of other stuff happened out, and we just never started phase 1, which this would be. So then Joe went out for bid because it was $50,000. All he needed to do was solicit 3 bids, and got someone to rehab that one tank so that we could show that we were doing a good faith effort. So DEP could be like, okay, you're at least starting the work. We'll talk to you here. which is exactly what happened. So Joe had RH White go in and start rehabbing one of the filtration tanks. So that means they drain the whole thing out. They re-put in all the filter sand, redo a new filter, and they paint the inside so there's no rust, because DEP doesn't want any rust getting into the water system. While that happened, and again, the only reason that was happening was because DEP told us that they weren't going to talk to us until we did that. And we're required to have 2 tanks running at all times. And that's why we have 3, is if one is down or we're working on one, we always have 2 running. Well, as filter tank number 1 was emptied and being worked on, they turned on the filters in the morning, and you start off with backwashing the filters to make sure that no material gets into the water system. When they turned on the backwash, filter number 2 blew. And I have a picture here to show you all from Joe, just so you can understand what's happening here. But what this meant for the town is that we now had one filter tank running when we're required to have 2 tanks running. And that is where the filter was, and that black material is the filtration stand that the water passes through to get there. So you can see that big crater that's there is a result of the failure. The failure that this money that DEP appropriated for us to get going and this warrant article were specifically intended to prevent from happening. So you can see a little bit more. You can kind of see how deep that break goes in that picture at the bottom there. And this is what tank number 1 now looks like now that it's been rehabbed, and then they fill in this area here with that sand that you see. So this metal plate here is what blew on the other tank when they backwashed it, because it was that rusted. So this warrant article that we were doing just to be nice with DEP and comply with what they were doing now turned into an emergency expenditure under the emergency procurement law. So long as we had money that was appropriated for a reason similar in language, we could use that as a temporary plug and then go for the money to refill that. So the loan that was passed in November to do the water and sewer work, the $3 million loan that we talked about, the way that language in that article was written was vague enough to be able to cover this work temporarily, which equated to about $51,000. So then if this passes, this appropriation would go to replenish that account for the water work that would be done. And again, it was around 51 grand.
What happens if it doesn't pass?
Then it's a reduction in the loan. Yeah. So that is where that article now stands as now an emergency expenditure article, rather than we're trying to be proactive and prevent this exact thing from happening. We were on pins and needles throughout the week and the weekend because we were hoping the same thing wouldn't happen with filter number 3. The way our water tanks are set up is they hold about 2 days worth of water for a regular day. And they were full. So we knew we had at least 2 days worth of water. However, we instructed Chief Knight to not use the fire hydrants and only use the pumper trucks, because if we had a fire and they use the hydrants, then that lowers the tank even more, which means we've had less water going. And we only had one of the filters running. And if filter 3 blew and we ran out of water, the pumps still run. So you'd still be getting water, but we'd have to put the town under a boil water order because it'd be straight mushkapog water rather than filtered clean water coming out of people's faucets. So none of us wanted to do that. So that's why the town put in that temporary water ban over the weekend. Why this is even more important. Director Buckley did plan on coming today to actually explain the reason behind all this to you, but he is now actually at a CIPC meeting that's happening at the same time to explain exactly what I told you all about to them, so they can vote to this as an emergency recommendation due to what happened.
So Mike, is tank 1 up again, or
Tank 1 is
No.
up as of 3 o'clock this afternoon. Thank God.
So now we're back to 2.
Yes.
Okay.
However, I should state that we are still under a water ban, not because of the town's doing, but because DEP put us under a water ban today because the Quinnapoxet River is below the ruler thing that they have there that says if it gets below this line, they put us in a water ban.
Okay.
Ted, I see you have a question.
Yeah. Somewhere buried in that story, are we missing $50,000 from 2014?
No, so that work is that's why that would that money was being used to do filter 1 when filter 2 blew.
Okay, just a little bit late, that's all, right?
Yeah, so they gave us the money and they told us you need to do this work in 14. And then 3 years later, they're like, okay, you still haven't done the work. And it was explained because of how big the price was. So they're like, okay, well, here's seed money to start the work. And then it just still didn't happen. So Joe was like, okay, well, actually do the work now. And it just happened that way.
So the
Just a
seed
quick
money
question.
being used.
What, Ted?
Yes, sir.
Just a question.
Yeah, the seed
What
money.
percentage or number of our residents are on town water?
Sheila, do you remember that number from the discussions we had last year? I can't remember that off the top of my head, but I think it's 6,000,
So 2/3-ish,
probably.
a little over half.
I wouldn't go that. 1,000 households.
Oh, households. Okay, gotcha.
So that is the situation that we have there.
And
How could this?
new buildings going in, they are not always on town water, are they?
No, it depends on where they're built. If they're outside where water lines are, they're on well and septic.
Okay.
The question was asked, how could this have been prevented? And when we asked that to DEP, they're like, oh, it's simple. You spend 50 grand per water filtration tank once every 10 years, and this should never happen. Well, the town has never been in that financial footing to be able to spend 50 grand 3 times every 10 years. So that was never done. We tried to make a good faith effort. We fixed the wrong one first, I guess, and the second one decided to play along. But again, so that's go ahead.
We actually are now with that savings program that we're looking at for next year. We should have some money put aside going forward.
Oh, yes. And again, we're because DEP should we did follow up with them, not DEP, excuse me, DLS, Divisional Local Services. We did follow up with them about that water and sewer free cash number. They told us they'd get to us on Monday. So they did give us at least a firm date as to when they would get to us on that. So that's more than we've had before. But yes, this is exactly why Director Buckley wants to have some type of reserve account for the enterprise account, similar to how we have with the general fund, where he just go to the finance committee for vote of approval, is because then that would be $50,000 or at least some type of money we would have on hand should something like this happen again. But where this brings us is that repair work was around $51,000. It was previously looking at like 45-ish, but then we had to have them work on the weekends to try to get this all done quicker and things like that. So that $100,000 that we were saying we might just take a portion of it might actually have to be that $100,000.
But that will get both tanks up and running.
Both of the other tanks up and running at separate times, so we still have all 2 tanks running at all times. But yes, that would be exactly what we need to get up to compliance with at least that order.
So Karen, I'm thinking that members of the public are not supposed to be participating?
What do you mean?
You have a cat in your hand.
Oh, she doesn't like it when I sit behind my computer.
But yeah, so anyway, like I said, that Quinnapoxet water ban, that's an annual one that the state requires us to have anyway by law. So it just ended up coinciding with it, but in the end it helped us out for at least those couple days. So that's that article. Are there any other questions on that one before I
No,
Go
I
on
think we're
next.
good.
So then the other article I wanted to talk about is that bylaw, just because the planning board did meet on it. We'll talk more about it on Monday because Dave has a full presentation on it to give the board then. And I did mention to him that the finance committee would be there too. So he is planning on having some information there for you all as well. The bylaw was actually originally written back in.
1 second, Mike. The planning board, although they're all members of the planning board subcommittee, that was the subcommittee that was meeting last night. The planning board has not met on that yet. That is to be scheduled, I believe, next week.
Okay. Well, thank you. The bylaw was originally written back in February, if you remember when I talked about this when we started to look at the warrant. And then what happened was he was planning on meeting with the Agricultural Commission in the first or second week of March, and then the pandemic happened, and then we had to train some members of the AgCom to use Zoom. So they finally had their meeting about it. They've had a couple meetings about this bylaw because they had suggested some edits. Dave had to then go back to town council to make sure their edits were actually legal, and after a couple of rounds of that, they finally had a product that they liked. Dave is soliciting public comment on it, which is something we haven't done for bylaws before, but it's something that it's an option that we can take advantage of if we want. That's where you can he's actually calling people and asking them to go and let them know what they think about the bylaw. And basically what it is that's why the planning board's public hearing on this is being scheduled for June 17th, which it doesn't actually have to be scheduled that far out. It's to allow extra time for the general public to send in their comments that they want to have before that public hearing, to see if there's anything we can get done before that public hearing has to happen. We double checked with state law and called the attorney. We talked to Anita for just general town meeting procedure and so on from there. The planning board doesn't have to have the public hearing before the warrant is set. However, the only thing they have to have is a recommendation by the time we get to the town meeting floor. And that happened last year, not with managed growth, but with the other zoning bylaw changes we had. The public hearing was had after the warrant was set. The gist of this bylaw is there would be certain accessory uses to farmlands that would be allowed. This could be having a wedding venue, disc golf courses, and things like that. How this came up where there were two local farmers who approached the town planner's office and asked how they would be able to do this if there was something in the existing bylaws that allowed for it. Dave said no, not really. So Dave reached out to MDAR, which is the Massachusetts Department of Agricultural Resources, who, it might not be resources, but it's Massachusetts Department of Agriculture. Who then said, oh, well, what a lot of cities and towns, or excuse me, what a lot of farming towns are doing is this, and this is what we're actually recommending, because MDAR is recommending that farms start to diversify their product as a way to help stay afloat because of how farms have been struggling in the state in recent years for many different reasons. So what the process would be is a farm would have to give, before 30 days of having an event or doing something like this, would have to petition the Ag Commission for a site review of what they want to do. They also at the same time have to do that with the town planner's office just to make sure everything fits into the other zoning besides this stuff, and then obtain a special permit from the state at MDAR. So Massachusetts Department of Agriculture would then give them a special permit to actually do this on top of that, but MDAR needs the okay from the town to do that first, and that's just the general site plan zoning review. After it clears the AgCom and the town planner's office and then goes to the state where they approve the special permit, they can then have these accessory uses of their farms, even though they're in either APR, which is Agricultural Protection Restrictions, or Chapter 61A, which is another farmland restriction. There have been some comments that we've received about, because if you're in Chapter 61A, you do have reduced property taxes because you are a farm. So we have gotten some input about why should the town be enabling a farm to get more revenue if the town's not getting more revenue out of it. We posed that question to MDAR, and MDAR was basically saying as a result that this is a way to make sure that if someone has a farm, it stays a farm, and it enables it to stay farmland and they don't sell it off, and then it becomes a Walmart or a development or something like that. It doesn't, not just a specific target there, just trying to preserve the state's farmland that's rapidly been declining in the past 10 years. So it's just a way to help farmers afford to stay on the farms that they own.
I think one of the things we should anticipate, there's going to be some people saying, what about neighbors? And that's
that would all fall under the site plan review. Yeah, I mean that would fall under the site plan review, because where that would fall is if you say we have a line of cars parking in the public right of way, we would need to know about that, one, but two, if there are any permits involved in any of that, this makes it so that they are required to take out all those permits. So say someone, I don't know if we have any farms like this, I honestly don't think we do, but say we had a town field next to a farm and they wanted to use the town field as the parking for whatever events they're doing on their farm. They need a permit, we need their insurance, so this is saying that it opens that up, but it also requires them to follow all of those channels too. So there is a double check there, just to prevent any nuisances that happen, like you're saying there, Carol.
So my question, Mike, is when we got all the town meeting materials back in beginning of April, why wasn't that included?
Because Dave knew that the AgCom had concerns about it, but they wanted to talk about it as a committee rather than individuals. So he wanted to see what those concerns were before he released it, because there were probably 10 or so changes that they requested to be made, and it went back and forth 3 or 4 times. I get it. I would have loved to have a draft in there when it went.
My whole thing is, and I know Dave heard it from me last night, seems like it's really being rushed through because we're trying to place these warrants on Monday, and we haven't even seen the bylaw, unless you live with someone who sits on the planning board. Other than that, you don't get to see it. So the thing is now we're going to get it Friday for a meeting on Monday to whether or not it can be placed or not. And that's true of the Finance Committee as it is for the Select Board.
Yes, I mean, I had meant to put it in the folder. I'm wondering if I put it in the wrong run, but you are correct. I did go through the folder and it is not there. But I will be sure to send that out to everyone this evening so you can at least take a look at it before Monday. I can tell you too, because we talked about this earlier when I said that there were some articles I held from going on to the initial warrant because of the current situation that we're in, and we said we wanted an easy town meeting with nothing there. The reason why this was still on the proposed warrant is because Dave made an argument that a lot of the opposition, not a lot of, but a fair amount of the opposition he received for the zoning bylaws that we had on the special town meeting warrant in November, were that we were going for a zoning change at a special and not at the annual. And people had a fundamental difference with doing zoning changes at a special town meeting where we historically ask people than at an annual town meeting where people expect things like this to happen. So that's why Dave really requested that we keep this on the annual town meeting warrant, because of that feedback he received in the fall from many individuals that said one of the only reasons why they voted against it, while others were different, was that it was a zoning change at something that was not the annual town meeting.
So we put it out. If indeed it gets placed, we post it on the website so everyone can see it and whatnot. Then the public hearing on the 17th, someone gets up and says something and they decide to make a change. Now everything that we've posted and everything, I know we can make the change in the motion, I know that. But now, how do we get the word out that this is now a change? Because I look at it as people might read through it and say, that's a really great idea, I love it, it's perfect, whatever, and then they make a change and no one knows about it. That's my thing.
Yeah, we'd have to use all of our modes of communication, and Dave and I have talked about this as a backup plan through our email blast system and everywhere we posted it, which is on the Facebook, on the website. We haven't sent an email blast out about this one yet. Dave has sent letters to all the farmers in town and has started to call them too. We would have to do all of those, and then with a cover letter that explains what all those changes are. And if say it happens the week of the town meeting, then we're not sending out letters, we're calling everyone and saying this change has been made and it equates to this. And we'd probably have that cover letter available either through electronic means or as a printout if we have in the handouts at the town meeting too, just show the edits that have happened since then.
Mike, another quick question. question on the state end of this. So we vote on it, and then it goes to the state. Does it come back to us if they make changes, or how does that work?
No, if we vote it, it happens. Are you talking about with MDR or with the Attorney General's office?
MDR, I believe, because that's the one that has the final say. Is that correct?
Yeah, the Special Permit Granting Authority?
Correct.
Yes, so that just, us passing this at town meeting just gives MDR the okay to start reviewing plans from Rutland. They can't go back and edit the bylaw we pass.
Okay.
Because their regulations are stricter than what this bylaw has per how that works with them, to give them the final authority over that. So we just are allowing the petitioners to go to MDR for that.
And then MDAC would either approve it or disapprove it.
Approve it as on an application basis per use per farm. So I'm saying is,
I know.
Schultz Farm is one of the farms that requested we look at this because they want to start doing weddings up at the top of the hill by their cornfield. So say we pass this, they would have to go to the AgCom and to Dave for a site plan review and say, are we allowed to do this? Dave would say, you can do this, but you can't park your cars here because it's a public right of way. Or we'd have to work something out with the town, or you'd have to get a detail or so on from there. They then take all that feedback from Dave and the AgCom that has to vote to approve or not.
It's not the AgCom that's doing the site plan review, it's the planning board.
The planning board, excuse me. Thank you, Tim. But the AgCom is in there too, and they do have to vote on the proposal as well. And then goes to MDR, who then issues the special permit for that application for that wedding. So MDR is checking every event that will happen at that property.
And just out of curiosity, does anybody know how long MDR takes? I mean, are you looking at a year out for each activity? I just out of curiosity.
I personally have no idea. I can certainly find out for you. I'm sure Dave knows, but I think that might even be in his presentation for Monday.
Okay.
Mike, the bylaw that Dave's presenting on Monday, is that the same one that emailed last Friday?
Yes. Yes, that's right. Yes, I did email that to the Finance Committee and the board last Friday.
Okay, I apologize. I didn't realize that we had received it, sorry.
So much has happened since then, I forgot about it. So that we're even there, Karen. But yes, that is the same one that got emailed out last Friday.
All right. I didn't know if there was a different version or something, but that's the one. Okay.
Ian, I see Lyndon has his hand raised.
Go ahead.
Okay, yeah, I just wanted to give a little input. I mean, without sustainability, I mean, farms aren't really surviving today, so this is really important to them. I did talk to Dave, communicate a little bit with Dave, and it is resource, Mike.
Oh, thank you very much.
But I think this is a really important thing, especially where we had so much activity in our last town meeting regarding housing and retaining rural character. And I mean, this is really important to the farms, and I support it. I haven't seen the bylaw, so I don't know the specifics, but I definitely support that we consider something like this very seriously.
I can say it is on the town's website now, so if you do want to take a look, for anyone who's watching, and for you, Lyndon, too, if you want, it should be up there. That went up Monday.
All right, I'll take a look at that. But yeah, I really hope that everybody will at least take a good look at it and consider, supporting it in some manner.
Yeah, I didn't mean to. I should say too, there was an issue with the initial link when it was posted. So we had to wait for till that was fixed to publicly announce that it was on the website, but it was at least supposed to be on the website then. I'll have to double check. Thank you. But I can say that, again, this is something that MDR said is one of what they're considering a best practice, and it should help those two farms that reached out. I can tell you at Schultz and Alta Vista to look at something like this down the road to see how it helped with diversifying farms in the future. And just because we only had 2 people reach out at once, it doesn't mean it's something that the other farms won't be able to take advantage of too, should it pass.
Now, does Holden have this type of thing for lilac hedge? I mean, because actually, that's probably an issue with our parking as well sometimes.
I'd have to take a look. I don't know if they have something exactly like this, but I can certainly find that information and have it by Monday.
So Mike, is the approvals required for every event, or do they make a request for these ongoing events?
From what I'm aware, I equate it in my head, just because I'm not a zoning expert, to something like a liquor license, where you can get a 1 day where it's a bunch of different events, or you can do it a year-long type thing where you have a plan in place. If you do the year-long, you have to have some type of plan in place to show this is what we're doing, this is how we're going to maintain it, this is how we're going to be sustainable with this business. Because at the same time, you don't want farms coming up with this big plan and then it falling through and ends up hurting the farm more than they were when it started.
Right.
So that's why you have to make sure it's sustainable there as well.
Okay.
I don't see it on the town website. I might have missed it, but I did notice that our town meeting isn't on there.
Yes, there was a mistake when it was on there that was brought to my attention this afternoon, so I asked Anita to take it down and put it back up. It said annual town election happening at Glenwood parking lot on June 27th.
That was on the calendar. That was on the calendar side. That's not on the front page.
Oh, okay. I'll make sure.
It's not on the front page. I would think that it's very nice. We had this beautiful picture of the mail-in voting mailbox. I would think that's nice and it's important, but I would say the annual town meeting is as important as a picture of the mailbox.
I'll be sure that gets up there.
Mike, where do we stand with the town sign? Moving on a little bit.
That we should be hearing from DLS tomorrow for final approval to see if that would be covered under the CARES Act. The initial guidance we've received is yes, it would, because if we do have a mass vaccination event, or if we do get a second wave and we need to tell people to wear masks again, continue hand washing, social distancing, things like that, that would be an avenue in which we could disseminate that information. So those types of signs, we have been given initial guidance would be covered under the CARES Act, but we'll get official word on that tomorrow.
So we should have an answer for that for Monday's meeting with the select board.
Yep.
That's the sign from the resident petition.
Yes. So if that does happen, then and we get moving on that, we can see if that's a item we take no action on and save that 30 grand in free cash.
Karen, where are you at? What's next?
That's it.
Any other business? You want to do the motion? Because I'm not sure who's logged on and not, so.
Oh, sure. I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
Second?
Second.
Okay. So roll call. Tommy?
Yay, I, whatever it is.
Ed?
Ted's on mute.
Aye. Sorry, I was moved. Aye.
That's okay. Not Lyndon. Ian?
Yes. Aye.
Carol?
Aye.
Pete?
Aye.
David?
Aye.
Karen? Aye. Okay. We're adjourned at 7:05.